are gathered in. We give him thanks because we know that he's with us. His promise is to be with us once we gather in his name. And where the Spirit of the Lord God is, Word of God tells us, there is liberty. And so we give God thanks. The youth department, and I want to also just extend a extra special greeting to Brother Greg, the youth leader. No, he's not feeling too well. We want to continue to pray God's healing touch upon his life. Thank you, my brother, for the invitation, the opportunity to share with you, and for your heart for God's work among the youth at Emmanuel and the wider community. Let us pray. God, we thank you for today. We thank you that there is no limit to your presence, your power, your anointing. We thank you that you are here with us. You have promised that, and you honor your word. We dedicate this time to you, O God. We dedicate the airwaves. We dedicate the broadband and the various mechanisms that are facilitating this collective worship experience this morning. We commit ourselves to you, commit the hearers, and God, I commit myself afresh to you as I share what you have laid upon my heart, particularly, Lord, on the occasion of Youth Sunday. May you cause all of us to hear your voice, that the Spirit's work of convicting of sin, of judgment, and of righteousness will make full proof in our experience this morning. Hear us, we pray, in the name of Jesus. Amen. Our text for reflection was read for us just now, but again, for emphasis and to reiterate, allow me to read for us again, to contextualize our reflections. How then shall we live following after Christ? Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. For by the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think of yourselves more highly than you ought. But rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. I'll stop there. The reading had gone on further, and I'm going to stop here at verse 3, rather. That's Romans chapter 12. Years ago, in my usual pursuit of reading, I came across a book written by Chuck Colson and Nancy Pearson titled, How Now Shall We Live? The title grabbed me from the moment I set eyes on it. How now shall we live? When I was asked to speak and the theme and focus shared with me, how shall we then live following after Christ? Naturally, I was reminded of that book's title and contents. I also used that same question. How now shall we live, as the concluding chapter for my first published book, Let's Major in the Minors. And I will be sharing some of the thoughts from that concluding chapter in our reflections here now. The text before us, Romans chapter 12, a well-visited text, a very fitting text, I believe, for the occasion of Youth Sunday under this theme. The Apostle Paul in Romans has spent the first 11 chapters presenting and explaining deep, often heavy theological foundations of the Christian faith. In chapter 12, he shifts his focus to how Christians should live, considering all that has already been expounded. In effect, he presents in the remaining 5 chapters of the letter to Romans how we should then live. We pay attention to the very opening words of chapter 12. In view of God's mercies, I beseech you, I beg you, I challenge you to, in view of God's mercies. As the link between all that he has already indicated, if you pay attention to what he outlines in chapters 12 all the way to the closing chapter 16, very practical implications for how we then should live our lives in light of what has been outlined, which can be summed up, as he did here, in light of the mercies of God. So he starts off by using the mercies of God as the backdrop. How now should we live in light of God's mercies? When we remember, when we think of God's mercies to us, how then do we live? Our text argues that the only fitting response to a person who understands the extent of God's mercies is willing surrender of self and will to a life of holiness as an act of worship. To understand that worship is not an activity limited to a specific place and time, but a continuous practice from the sacrificial life. Life lived by giving up our desires, wants, pleasures, to do what pleases God. Pursue this, he says, then you will be able to discover the good and perfect will of God. Or you will be able to discover what pleases God, what makes God smile. Jeremy has a song where he says, Jesus, at the end of the day, I want to make you smile. It is to live the crucified life. Living the crucified life demands a rejection of the pressure of the world's system to squeeze us into its mold. Conformity is an issue for all stages and all ages of life, not just for teenagers, as we tend to like to think when we speak about things like peer pressure, as if to suggest that it is only teenagers who are under pressure to conform. Not so. At every age of life, we will always be under the pressure to conform to the systems of this world, the ways of thinking of the world, the world's worldview, if you will. So this countercultural lifestyle that is being encouraged here in view of God's mercies is only possible when the disciple of Jesus undergoes a complete change of form and of being through a total change in mindset or a radical shift in worldview. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind, our text tells us. And the word used here for transformed is the root of our English word metamorphosis, which is used to describe the fascinating process of a caterpillar, for example, becoming a butterfly. Imagine the process in your mind's eye for a moment with me, if you will, from a creepy, crawly, bound by gravity creature with 2 or maybe 3 at most colors of beauty to a multicolored, gravity-defying, flying butterfly. Beautiful, assorted colors, leaping through the air. What a transformation! That's the word the apostle uses in our text. The invitation to us is to recognize the breaking of the barriers, the escape from the limits, the movement from the base level to the heights of potential, our potential in God, as we throw off the older mindset and embrace the mind of Christ. You see, Christ must always be the standard that we strive towards. Therefore, Paul boldly declared to those he discipled, follow my example as I follow Christ. Follow me as I follow Christ. The renewing of the mind is the adaptation of the mindset of Christ. That mindset is described in Philippians chapter 2, verses 5 to 8, for example. There, he paints an entire summary of the incarnation of Jesus, the coming into flesh of Jesus, which comes to a climax on the cross. The world's media and all the self-help gurus tell us that the way to glory is upwards at any cost. The mind of Christ, however, glorification comes through surrender, service, and sacrifice. It is as we surrender ourselves and sacrifice our will to what God wants in the service of others that God exalts us. Totally counterintuitive as far as the world is concerned. Totally contrary to the model of the world. Did we hear the text? Do not continue any longer. Stop being conformed to the way and the pattern of the world. Our conformity must be to a different order, a different way, a different methodology, a different approach. The mind of Christ is the model. So let me ask of us, can I interrogate us? Can I ask us to interrogate ourselves based on our text and our theme this morning? Can those observing or studying your life find the example of Christ? Which of us can boldly declare, like the apostle, follow me as I follow Christ? Is your life spreading everywhere the fragrance of Christ? Are you living proof that a follower of Jesus is God's letter to the world? Images all of how Paul describes the follower of Christ, that we are to be spreading everywhere the fragrance of Jesus, that by our life we are to prove that we are God's letter to the world. So, how then shall we live? in view of God's mercy, in view of the call for our lives to be able to testify boldly, to speak, follow me as I follow Christ, following through on the example of Jesus. How then shall we live? How shall we then live? Allow me to share some specific examples, some specific areas of focus in our quest to answer that question this morning. I want to propose 3 kinds of alignments, 3 kinds of shifts, if you will, that will allow us to live in a way that is fitting with an understanding of the mercies of God, in a way that will prove that we are indeed following the example of Christ, following after Christ. And I want to propose a realignment with others, a realignment with ourselves, or perhaps a realignment of ourselves, and a realignment with God. Let's start with the realignment with others. Our posture, the way we relate to others. That if it is that we are to have the renewed mind, to experience and undergo the transformation. And I want you to notice that in the text, it is in the verb is in a participle format. Be transformed by the renewing, a continuous renewing. It is an ongoing decision, intentionality to continue to experience a renewed mind, the adapting of our minds away from the pattern of the world to a following after the example of Jesus. A realignment with others first. There is a desperate need for us to hear the thunder of Amos and Micah, for example, against the rampant injustice in our nations. The prophets of the Bible like Obadiah, Amos, Micah, Isaiah scream this focus at us. But are we hearing? Do we realize that the names that we call today as the heroes in the fight for justice made their mark and risked it all from their youthful days? Think of Paul Bogle, Marcus Garvey, Bob Marley, William Wilberforce, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and so many others. They made their mark on a world suffering from injustice in their youthful days. Stop thinking that you are too young to be interested in matters of justice, for God's heart is a heart of justice. Our posture as far as others are concerned, if we are to follow the example of Christ, must be a posture where we hear God's concern for justice. And even as young people, we become passionately concerned and passionately involved in the pursuit of justice. One of the great hymns of the Christian faith has a line that says, as Christ died to make men holy, to make people holy, let us live to make them free. We think of a realignment with others. We must in ourselves have no use for the devils of passive, possessive, and predatory oppression. Love and truth must instead ooze from the very core of our being. Of what do I speak when I mention passive, possessive, and predatory oppression? Passive oppression refers to the choice we make to see persons being abused, oppressed, and disadvantaged, and to remain aloof, unconcerned, apathetic when we refuse to assist because we don't know the person, or because it's not my family or my friend, It is really an indication that we have no sense of compassion for others. Not so is Jesus. Possessive oppression refers to the ways in which we oppress others in our lust and our thirst for more of this world's goods. In our mad rush for the creature comforts, we allow the crab in a barrel syndrome to infect us. You know, just this week, I saw Emily Shields lamenting another case of someone who had been fleeced, a foreign resident who had been fleeced out of all the money that they had sent to someone out here to build them a house. They had been sending money and they were receiving progress photos of a house being built. But when they arrived in the island, unknown to the builder, they discovered the lot of land as empty as they had bought it. Possessive oppression, the ways in which we oppress others as we seek to possess more money and more wealth and more material things. Predatory oppression refers to the actions we take against others which victimizes them, especially in a dehumanizing manner. So you can't be a disciple of Jesus and give a girl date rape drugs, for example. Absolutely no form of rape for that matter. And so we absolutely and categorically condemn the actions of the various members of the clergy whose names have been called and implicated in various forms of sexual abuse and misconduct in recent times. Not so. It must not be named among the followers of Jesus, young or old alike. It's Youth Sunday, so we're focusing on youth, but young or old alike. There is no room and space for gender-based violence in this transformed life that our text invites us into. You, as a youth who is seeking to follow Jesus in your high school, you can't be bullying the grade 7 and 8 boys or girls for that matter for their lunch money. Nor should you be forcing them to join the line to buy you your lunch simply because you are older or bigger than them. Let us determine to set the example for a divided world by refusing to perpetrate any kind of dehumanizing actions. The image and the likeness of God upon the human being must never be disrespected. This is the point that Jesus was making when he stated in the Sermon on the Mount, saying that if you say to your brother, Raka, you become answerable to the courts. And if you say, you fool, you are in danger of hellfire. Raka was an Aramaic term of contempt. And calling someone a fool reduces them to less than human being. So I ask you to contemplate, as we focus on a realignment with others, as followers of Jesus, what are the ways in which we speak to and about others, which dehumanizes them? God takes this very seriously because every human bears his image. And you know, there's a growing temptation that I'm noticing for persons to utilize the viral nature of social media to shame, embarrass, and scandalize others. Apparently, we have fooled ourselves into thinking that we are hidden behind our devices. So that makes it okay. Well, newsflash, once you post it, we can trace it back to you. So you are not hidden. But more than that, it is still wrong. I keep hearing and loving the line from the song that we sing, "We are one in the spirit." The line that says, we will guard each man's dignity and save each man's pride. So the apparent colleague who realized that her colleague teacher was engaging in sexual activities on the JTA Zoom meeting and recorded it and then proceeded to post it online, to publish it, could really have done the more honorable thing. Love, the scriptures tells us, covers a multitude of sins. It is the way of Christ to cover, to seek to preserve the dignity, not to seek to denigrate and embarrass others for jokes and for likes. To follow Jesus is to do like him, and realignment with others. But then there's also a realignment with ourselves that our text challenges us towards, where we recognize that haughtiness in us must go, for it leads to delusions of grandeur, and it makes one desire to always be first and to become deluded and disoriented in our view of ourselves, thinking that we are invincible, that our wealth, our possessions, our accolades, our credentials, our intellect, our talents make us bigger and better than anybody else, to a point where we can even think that even God must bow to us. Our text says, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourselves with sober judgment. To allow pride and haughtiness to linger in your life is like cutting off the very branch on which you are sitting, because when all is said and done, God has the final word. Not you, not me, not your idol, not your doll. I think the world got a very vivid example of what happens to persons who behave like that in what we saw of that Diamond League race yesterday. Enough said. Our text invites us then to reshape our thinking. The importance of this should not be lost on us. If we recall the Bible stating that as a person thinks, so they are. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. In other words, then, we become our thoughts. And so as our thinking is properly aligned to love and truth, our souls experience a prosperity that is not measured by how blessed materially we are, but by how much of the materials that we have, we joyfully deploy and employ in hospitality towards God's servants and God's people and the people of the world on a whole. Wealth and prosperity move from becoming an end to be pursued to being a means to an end, a means to allow us to be a blessing to others. We need a realignment of our hearts as young people, because everything around us is seeking to tell us that we must get money and get more of it and get fancy cars and get all the trimmings and the trappings as far as the world considers bling, and that is what defines us. The Bible, the example of Christ, is that we go after the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and in doing so, God adds these things to our lives so that we can be a blessing to others. Our wealth and our property, our houses, our lands, our money then becomes tools in the hands of God. Our money therefore becomes our mission. Money as missions. What a revolutionary concept. And lastly, I want to challenge us about a realignment with God, a realignment with others, a realignment of with ourselves, a realignment with God. The traditional posture of church, especially in the Caribbean, I've observed, is one where we convince ourselves and others, it would seem, that faith and feelings is all that we need to serve God. But notice the text mentions the centrality of our minds, that our thinking becomes renewed and realigned to the thinking of Christ and the mindset of Christ, as the way in which we experience the transformation that moves us from conformity to the way of the world to a life that is pleasing to God. A change in our thinking. So think we must. The fact that millennials, by nature, and most of you as youth are described as millennials, that millennials by nature are more inclined to logic and thinking and critical analysis, may make many in the church, in church leadership, nervous. But I want to encourage you to think on, continue to think, for we are encouraged to think. We must think, for it is our thoughts that influence our actions. And we are encouraged to take every thought captive to the Lordship of Jesus. We cannot afford to live in this world where thoughts are driving the advertisement, and thoughts and arguments and logic are infiltrating, seeking to infiltrate the church and bringing in doctrines unawares, as Jude says, that seek to change the grace of God into a license for sin, challenging every long established boundary as far as morality and ethics are concerned, trying to tell us that the very things that the Bible tells us clearly are wrong are now okay because God is full of grace and God is not going to mind. We have to think, therefore, about our faith and think through the Word of God so that we are not caught off our feet. The scripture gives us a template, if you will, a way to strengthen our thinking and our defense of the faith that we hold so that these teachings don't sweep us away in the current. We are challenged to intentionally deepen and widen our knowledge of the Word of God. So you can't spend multiple hours of every day on TikTok and snapping and on YouTube and frolicking on your devices. You have to build into your day intentionally time to deepen your knowledge of the Word of God. For it is that will become the filter, the strainer, if you will, to battle all these logical arguments that are being put out there, with big money backing them, to influence our thinking and our actions. We are challenged by the scriptures to not just read the Word, but to live out the Word so that our life becomes the message. And then we are challenged by the scriptures, in the book of Jude in particular, to search out, to seek for those who are perishing, those who may become influenced and have fallen under the influence of these crafty schemes of the ways of the world, with the infiltration of these messages in the movies and in the music and in the art forms, to go after them and snatch them from the fire, as it were. You then, as youth at Emmanuel, you then at youth wherever you are, who are standing strong and desiring to stand strong, part of your responsibility is to reach out for those other youth who seem to be buckling under the pressure and help to bring them back into the fold. A realignment of our hearts with God, where we stand strong and firm on the Word of God, because we are thinking about our faith and we are able to think through things and give a defensible reason for the faith that we believe. We are called out into the deep of the faithful trust in God, so that we cast overboard. We reject the banality, the carnality, and the superficiality, which is the curse of the age. My friends, how then shall we live? How shall we then live? In this world that is changing so rapidly and may never return to what it once was. A world where every landmark is being challenged.
I don't nobody now wear no mask. We go to
in the midst of a crooked and a perverse generation.
And that's why the Prime Minister people
We are called to take a stand for Jesus, living godly lives, to deny ungodliness, to say no to unrighteousness. Let me challenge us. Don't be afraid. Don't be intimidated. You are young, but you count. You are young, but you matter to God. You are young, but the Spirit of God is in you to strengthen you to stand in these times. Embrace the unknowns boldly, because it is Jesus who is keeping you and who is able to present you, to keep you from falling and present you faultless before his glorious throne. How shall we then live? We live by refusing to be alienated from ourselves, by realigning ourselves, by realigning with others, by realigning with God. And we do this by rejecting the squeeze of the world's pressure to accept its ideas, its philosophies, its influencers, by willingly embracing the cross. The cross, which is that symbol and representation of the mindset of Christ. The symbol and reminder of the renewed mind. The cross, which echoes surrender, service, and sacrifice. The cross, which sets the tone for how then we should live. A realignment with God, so that we stand strong and defend our faith by thinking and taking every thought captive. A realignment with others by standing up for justice, by refusing to participate in possessive and predatory oppression and passive oppression. A realignment with ourselves by rejecting idolatry, where we pursue God first and we allow money and power and possessions to become servants and tools in the hand of God to bless others, and not that which defines us and our identity. How shall we then live? Following after Christ. Let this mind which was in Christ be also in you.